G'day, Flosstube. Thought I would just go ahead and film this bead / metallic conversion segment. Well, the one that I just did is uploading because it's going to bog my computer down for 2 hours uploading. So, I'm back again already. I thought for the purposes of this video, we would just use the Maiden Macca's Mermaid as an example. It's got both the beads and the Krynic. It's out and it's handy, and the conversion work is already done. So I can more or less walk you through what I did. When I say it's almost done, take that with a grain of salt, because on all my conversions, until the thread or the beads or whatever are on the piece, it's not done. I reserve the right to change my mind and swap something out, you know, until it's literally sewed on. And even then, I've sewed on a dozen or more beads, decided, nah, I don't like it, ripped them out and swapped them for a different color. So, I mean, yes, it's pain, particularly picking out beads. And I've had them sewed on with the invisible thread so you can't see anything. But if it's a result that you're going to care about and be unhappy with it, you know, take the time, rip it out. You'll be happier in the end. At least that's my theory. Anyway, so to do these conversions, step one, get yourself a notepad. I would be smarter to have like an actual dedicated notepad with all these notes in it. I just have gobloads of scrap paper and random stuff written everywhere. And then most of my projects have a box that has scissors. This one's got a spare mask just in case we need to go anywhere. Needles, random bits and pieces. And so then these all notes live in the box with the random bits and pieces so they don't get lost. The problem with just having random bits and pieces, scattered notes, is that inevitably when I go and pack up the project, I throw them in the bin because I'm done. I'm not going to restitch it. I have tried to get better about putting it up on an old blog I had from years ago when I was doing cards. And so the blog name is like Cards and Stuff or some. It's not even relevant to cross stitch, but I've repurposed it and put my cross stitch stuff on there just so that I can link you guys when I get questions about what conversions I did do. I will put a link to the blog and you can go dig through. There's not more than half a dozen different conversions on there, but you might find something of interest to you. Okay, so Maiden of Tibet. I have no idea how you say that. Maiden has basically the full gamut. It's got Krynic, 3 bits of Krynic, all the number 4 braids. To be honest, I treat 4 and 8 exactly the same. I swap them all out for the petite treasure braid. I don't like the extra thickness of the larger braid. I just want the sparkle. Similarly, the Mill Hill, sometimes it's 6 and 8 pony beads. I swap them all out for the smaller sized bead, the Delica equivalent, but basically it winds up with where it might have had Mill Hill, 11, 6, and 8 originally. I will have Delica 11 and 8 must be the smaller size, and 6 the really big one, because I think the numbers go in reverse. I think. Don't quote me. Okay. So, having said that, first protocol when I start doing one of these things is to pull out the relevant conversion chart. And I've listed both of the initial conversion charts that I use down below in the description box. So, for the Maiden, it was a very trivial exercise for the Krynics. All 3 of those Krynics were listed in that conversion chart, and I just, in the initial, I just go with what the chart says. There have been cases where I don't like what the chart says, and then I might swap it out later. But for the first pass, to call it kitted, I just get whatever the chart says and chuck it in and Bob's your uncle. And we at least start at that point. There's a few, you'll notice on the chart, some of them have an asterisk next to it. So in the maiden, it called for Krynic 1432 blue ice. You will notice the chart says PB09, and it's got an asterisk next to it. That means the 09 may or may not be a very good representation of the original Krynic. Like I said, until I get to the point where I hate it, we're using 09. I will sometimes at that, no, let me just hold off on that thought. So for this one, that was fairly straightforward. There are cases occasionally where there's no conversion listed on that chart. It's less of a problem with the Krynic to treasure braid than it is with the Mill Hill to Delica, but it can happen in both scenarios. So at this point, I have a relatively healthy stash of treasure braids that I bought for older projects. And here, let me show you. All my specialty stuff, I just have a Tupperware. Each one goes in a plastic bag. And then this has actually got several cards of it in it. You know, it'll have the PB number on there. And this is a Gloriana or something. You know, all the silks and stuff are done the same. I keep them in numerical order so that I can find things when I'm looking for them by number. But basically, for the Krynic conversion, if I don't find what I want on the chart, second protocol is to go to this box, because I've got a relatively healthy stash at this point. And I've already pulled up the Krynic on my computer so I can see roughly. I'm looking for a light blue. And I'll just flick through and think, oh, maybe that blue is sufficient. Not exactly a light blue, I'm just picking up examples. And so at that point, between looking at the chart where that color is used and looking at the other threads, the DMC threads that I pulled out, I will try and come up with something out of my stash that I can throw in the initial kit up to save buying anything else, because clearly I've got a few of these at this point. You know. Anyway, so sometimes I get lucky and, you know, I've got the answer right there. You could also sometimes look at alternative products, like the silk lame braid is not as shiny as the treasure braid. It does have a bit of a metallic in it, but it's definitely more subtle. So if I was looking for a light blue, but I didn't think the metallic-y, shiny bit was terribly important, I might swap it out for the silk lame braid, you know, in that color, if I thought the color was relevant. I have been known to buy, I'm assuming that's why I bought this sparkle braid. It was to try and see whether it's more similar to the actual Krynic braids, where it's a cord. I don't know whether you can even see that, guys. I don't know how this video is going to turn out. Anyway, it's more of a cord like you would get with the Krynics. And so my intention was to try it on a project. I've not actually tried to stitch with it yet, so we shall see whether I like it or not when we get that far. So while I'm at it, let me just pull over. That's the Mill Hill box. So same sort of thing applies. If the initial conversion chart doesn't give me what I want for beads, I will pull up the image of the Mill Hill I'm trying to match on the computer, at least get a, you know, basic color, and then I just look through the Delicas that I already have. I don't want to tip this whole container out. So I store them in these little plastic containers. You know, I can see right through them. And I'll just browse and pick, do I have something sort of suitable? If yes, call it good for a first pass anyway. I have less of a stash of the Delicas to work from, so more often than not, that doesn't yield a great result. But as time goes on, I'm assuming that will get a little bit better. If neither of those have yielded any results, then I go to looking at the original. Start with the Krynic. I will insert the image of the treasure braid I compare it to, so you can see it's basically just an image of the sample card of treasure braid. So I'll look at the original Krynic spool preview from some shop, and I'll look at the sample card for the treasure braid. And again, I'm looking for a light blue. These are the possible numbers. At that point, I probably pull up like a store preview of a short list of numbers that I'm comparing it to decide in a bit more detail, do I think this is the right blue that I probably want to sub it out? If I've had to go to comparing image to image on the internet and commit to buying something, at that point, to be honest, I probably buy 2 potential candidates for a color if I'm not sure. Just so that I have something to compare when I get the physical product in my hand. Hence the reason I have started to accumulate a fair bit of a sample card of my own in my stash. I know that is potentially a bit of a concern for some of you who are a bit more frugal in what you want to purchase, in which case, just, make your best guess, go with it. The reality is, if you get it there and it doesn't bother you, use it. Half the time I have a dilemma going, oh, they're both okay, so which one should I use? At that point, I could have bought either one of them and saved the extra on the other card. Having said that, on the cost side of things, for both the Mill Hill and the Delica, I find that buying a single card of treasure braid versus a single card roll of Krynic, the treasure braid is more expensive at the checkout. Having said that, when I stitch, I only ever use one strand of the treasure braid. I never double it. So the treasure braid goes a lot farther. I might have to buy 2 or 3 rolls of the Krynic to do what I can do with a single roll card of the treasure braid. And so it doesn't look like the Maiden is too bad. None of these are marked as multiple spools, but some of them are certainly several spools worth of Krynic. I think Bellatrix was like that, like several spools of Krynic, and I bought 1 card of treasure braid. So, and the same goes for the Mill Hills and the Delicas. Like, I've had kits where patterns. In fact, it was the Enchantress of the Abyss. It called for 4 packets of Mill Hill beads for one of the main colors of beads. I bought 1 5-gram tube of Delicas. By the time you multiply your Mill Hills by 4, you're far better off buying the Delica, in my estimation, because you get a lot more beads. You can see, trying to pick one, like, I know I've done at least 2 projects with this orange. One of them was Electra and something else. So they weren't massive projects, but I know I've done at least 2 projects, and I've got freaking acres of orange beads left. I think this is the main sub that I do for, what's the main Mill Hill gold? I don't know. But I used to buy that Mill Hill gold bead that is so commonly used with just about every single kit. And now I can go, every single project. And now I can go 2, 3, even 4 projects before I have to buy another thing of Delicas. So, yes, when you are buying 2 intending to only use 1, there is some wastage there. But when you go to, like, if you just buy the one and you think you're really legitimately going to use it, and particularly when your pattern calls for a lot of it, the savings really start to add up, in my opinion. So I do similar thing with the Mill Hill and the Delica beads. The difference is I haven't found a good way to kind of look at all the Delica options. And so what I've ended up doing is basically I found 2 stores in Australia that I'm relatively happy to buy my Delicas from. It's kind of 50-50 as to which one I order from. It basically amounts to who has the bead color I'm looking for. They don't appear to both carry exactly the same color range, you know. So in that case, I will pull up the original Mill Hill color I'm trying to match and try and filter their bead selection, you know, by reds or blues or whatever, and scroll through. And every time I find one that I think this is a reasonable candidate, right click, open in a new tab. You know, until I've collected a handful that I think are reasonable options. And then I start flicking through my tabs and closing the worst candidates till I hopefully get it down to just 1 or 2 that I think are a good match. Like I say, that tends to be a little bit winging it because A, your images are cruddy guides anyway. Sometimes there just are not particularly close matches to be found. Find something that your gut says it's close. You know, look at the other DMC colors and whatever if you need to. Find something you think is close, go for it. Exact same process with the pony beads, except that, you know, I only get in the Delicas, I only get the DBL size. You can even see how big those beads are. Maybe if I get a different color. You see, you can see better with that color how big the beads are. And so I will consolidate both the 6 and 8 size pony beads down to this one particular size Delicas. And partly that is very specifically a Bella Filipina thing. Those things are so heavily beaded that there's just not room. Even if you do it on 28 count and use exactly what he's charted, there's just physically not enough room to fit the beads in the space that's given, my opinion. So that resolves that. The only thing left then is for the maiden, we have glass treasures, crystal treasures, and bugle beads. So the bugle beads I do exactly pretty much the same as a Delica. The beads I end up buying are not a Delica, so there's no conversion chart to start with. At least I don't. Oh, those are from the Chatelaine kit. I know I bought. No, these are labeled as Delicas, unless I've mislabeled them. But there's no conversion chart per se, at least not that I've ever bothered to find and work out. So I will just go straight to comparing the images online and grab what I think is right. The only thing I do make sure I do is compare the original size. So if it's a 6mm bugle bead, I'll get 6mm Delica on my filter. For the same. The treasures can be a bit hit and miss. So the maiden had a couple of very specifically shaped treasures, a starfish and 2 packets of scallops. I did a search for generic beads and didn't find any starfish and scallops. So I just went ahead and I've left those specifically shaped millhills. I will use the original called for treasures. For things like, where did they go? I think they call these AB bicones. I'm not exactly across quite what all the naming convention means. I'm sure you could get a lot more detailed and it would help refine your search. So these little cone shapes, you see them come up frequently in your kits. And again, I will just go limit my search on my bead store for the correct size. So if I'm looking for 6mm, I filter to 6mm. You can usually filter on the shape so that you only get those triangular shaped bicones. And you can get some diagrams that tell you the proper names of the different shapes to help you with your Googling. And then I will just simply look for a similar color. So I think these were left from the Enchantress. I got a pack of 10. I still got 6 of them left I could use for another project. Again, if I don't have the list for the Enchantress in front of me, but I would say 4 is pretty hit and miss as to whether or not I would have gotten 4 of those, or whether that would have been 2 millhill packs plus, I still got leftovers. The other one I can often do that just look and fudge is these. Hold on. These little flower. Where is my camera today? Flower shaped beads. Oh. Focusing, not so much. Can you see? It's a flower, guys. Again, another very, very common shape. Looking at, comparing it to the Maiden's treasure list, it calls for 4 millhill packs in this shape, the bicone shape, and a single one in this flower shape. So that's 5 millhill packs. I don't believe I've actually ordered these generic treasures for the Maiden, but when I do, I will basically do 1 pack of flowers that will probably be more than sufficient, and I'll have several left over, and 1 pack of the bicones. So again, well, the individual cost of this packet may be more than, in fact, even that. I think these packets are like $2, which is probably less than one of the millhill packets. When it comes to the treasures, I think there's a lot of money to be saved by simply taking a punt off something on the internet. And even in the case of, these were from the Enchantress, I looked at those flower beads and I really wasn't sure which one I was going to like. You see they're very similar, just dark reds, but one's got a bit more of a purple and a multicolored sheen in it, a little bit more brown, and one's a much truer red. Well, I decided I wasn't that fussed on the really true red with the color scheme, and the other one worked better. So yeah, I wasted an extra $2 or whatever on the red beads that I never ended up using, but A, I do enough beading that I will use them somewhere else, and B, it's still probably less than it would have cost me to buy all those millhills packets. So hopefully that gives you guys enough of an idea of what I do when I go through the conversion process. Like I said, every time I pick up one of my pieces, and go to stitch, so the Maiden at the moment doesn't have any of the cryogenic treasure braid or the beads in it yet. But I was looking at it the other day and I noted that this PB09. This is the one that was marked as not a particularly good representation of its Kreinik version. I noted those few empty stitches there are meant to be in that color. Now, to my mind, that's perfectly suitable color. Whether or not it's an accurate representation of the original Kreinik, I don't care. It'll look nice in there. And so I think we can call that a good conversion. Obviously, a lot of these lines left through the maiden are all beads. So I will go through the same process when I start putting beads in. Look at the colors I've got in front of me that I kitted up originally. Do I like them? Do I not like them? If the answer is I like them, that's it. Sew them in. So that's what I do. Like I said, fair bit of winging it. But yeah, I guess the stumbling block, I think, for a lot of people is they don't want to buy, 2 cards of treasure braid or 2 packets of beads because they're worried about getting it right the first time. I am of the opinion that long term it comes out to your advantage, because even if you don't use it, you'll use it for future reference when you're looking for cards, and you won't buy it then. It might be a little bit different if you're only ever stitching the one project that needs metallics and beads, but I do so many of them, I just figure it'll get used on the road. And so long term, it'll all come out in the wash, even if the day I hit purchase, it's maybe a little bit wasteful. So that's what I got for you. I hope it is helpful. I hope it made sense. Let me know. All right? And I'll see you with more beads and bling and stitching another day. See you guys.